In this lesson, we'll discuss the difference between callbacks, promises, and async await in modern JavaScript. We'll also discuss how the node driver responds depending on how you call certain methods. Unless you are completely new to JavaScript, and welcome if you are most likely familiar with callbacks. For those of you that might need a refresher, callbacks are a way of passing a bundle of information along to a different part of our program. They are functions that some other portion of our code can run. I like to think of them like handing a remote control to someone else. Let's look at an example. Here, I'm issuing a find one query on the movies collection, searching for movies where the title is Once Upon a Time in Mexico. I also pass along this callback here. This callback is a function that will be called back when MongoDB finds a document or encounters an error. If there is an error, this error argument will be something real, and if there is no error and it found a document, error should be null, and there should be something in the document argument. Now, we know this movie exists, so we expect error to be null. We expect the doc title to be Once Upon a Time in Mexico, and we expect the doc cast to contain Salma Hayek. Here I pass done, and this is only for the testing framework. Let's go ahead and give it a run. Great. I can see that the movie I found was Once Upon a Time in Mexico, and the cast did contain Salma Hayek. Otherwise, this test wouldn't have passed. So now, let's jump into promises. Promises are a way of saying, do this thing, and when it's done, do one of two things, resolve or reject. Promises allow us to be more declarative. Let's look at the same query as before, but instead, use a promise. Now, there's one interesting note. While browsing the node driver documentation, you may encounter documentation like the following. Find one, where it takes these arguments, and you see the return type is a promise. The driver inspects whether a callback is passed. If no callback is passed, the driver will return a promise automatically. Great stuff. So here, I'm issuing a find one against the movies database. And again, I'm searching for a movie where the title is Once Upon a Time in Mexico. Instead of passing a callback, you can see I'm calling .then, receiving the document argument, where I expect, again, for the title to be Once Upon a Time in Mexico, and the cast to contain Salma Hayek. I then call done, and again, that's just for the testing framework. Now, if there's an error, this is where we would handle it. Here I append .catch to this method chain. I receive the error, and I expect this error to be null. So if it does return an error, this test wouldn't have passed. Let's go ahead and run it and make sure that it works as expected. All right, I see it ran my promises test, and the test passed. I didn't get an error callback, and the document I got back did contain the correct title and had the correct cast member. This is pretty nice. We said, hey Mongo, find one document where the title is Once Upon a Time in Mexico. Then I'll do something with that. Catch any error and let me do something with that if that's the case. Now on to async and await. There's another way to handle promises that results in very clean code, and that's using async await. It's the style we'll use throughout the codebase for this project. Now don't let the terminology intimidate you. We JavaScript programmers like to add fancy names to things to feel better about things like not empty array, evaluating to false. You'll have to forgive us. To use async await, we need to mark our function as async, as can be seen in the test function for this lesson. This then lets us use the await keyword for promises. Behind the scenes, you can think of it as attaching the .then part to a promise and returning that value. So what about the catch part? That's handled by a catch block. An important thing to remember is to always surround await statements with a try-catch block. Let's see an example. Here I have my try and catch block. I'm using destructuring here and awaiting the result of movies find one where the title is Once Upon a Time in Mexico. I also use destructuring to peel off the cast property from an await movies.find one on the same thing. Now, it would be a lot more efficient to do both of these in one operation, but I wanted to show that we can nest multiple awaits within a single try. So I expect the title to be Once Upon a Time in Mexico, and I expect the cast to again contain Salma Hayek. Then, in my catch block, I expect E to be null. This catch block will trigger if the promise rejects. If the promise rejects, we definitely want the test to fail, so asserting that E will be null means that it will fail for sure. Let's go ahead and test this. Great. I can see the async await test ran and the test passed. It works as expected. And that covers callbacks, promises, and async await at a high level and how the node driver will behave when passed a callback or not. If any of this is unclear, head to our forums to ask for help. If you are very new to JavaScript and not familiar with callbacks or promises, there's a link in the documentation for this lesson that I highly recommend you read. There are some things to remember. You should always wrap await statements with a try and catch block. If you aren't comfortable with promises, you can always supply a callback to the driver methods that are asynchronous. And if you don't pass a callback, a promise will be returned.